Sean nodded without a doubt, obviously. Meanwhile, they were flying over an azure ocean that stretches across the horizon. The sunlight pours upon the waves, reflecting a sea of sparkling golden. Sean's eyes widen in awe. He pressed his forehead against the window, looking like a child who saw piles of sweet presented before him. Looking at his reaction, Reeve smiled and spoke into her communication device. "Boss, it seems that it's a first time for our rookie technical soldier to see the ocean. Could you give your permission for him to have a breath of the sea breeze?" Sean glared at Reeve, thinking how on earth is it possible Colonel Burton would approve such absurd request. Heine's chilling voice sounded from the device, and Reeve went over and slid open the cabin door. A warm and moist sea breeze gushed into the cabin, buffeting Sean's hair, bringing along a salty scent that seeped into his nose. It was distinctly different from the freshness of the forest, but nevertheless pleasant, putting his mind at ease. Reeve mouthed at Sean, "See? He's not as bad as you think." Sean showed a longing look without himself noticing and said with a wry smile, "I used to dream that I could become an oceanographer like my father when I was a child. Ironically, only until today I see a real ocean." Reeve blinked for a moment and spoke into the communication device, "Boss, our rookie said his ambition is to be an oceanographer." Mark scratched his head, looking puzzled. "I've heard of virologists, neurologists and also some Army ordnance physicist. There's even an oceanographer? What's there to research about the sea?" True, ever since humans had migrated to Charles' underground city, the studies on oceans have lost their significance. With that said, the aircraft descended slowly and flew in a steady 60 degrees slanted above the water surface. Reeve, however, ushered him with her hands waving, "Come here. I'll grab hold of you. Colonel said you only have 30 seconds. Sean blinked in bewilderment. That Heine Burton, who is always bleak and aloof, actually gave him such an opportunity in the midst of a mission? Removing his safety equipments, Sean went on all fours before stretching his arm towards Reeve. Reeve grabbed hold of his arm while Mark gripped onto one of his legs without a word. Sean was then sprawled before the cabin exit with his left hand extended out from the cabin. The moment his fingers came in contact with the water, Sean felt his heart thump so loudly as though it was about to leap out of his chest. He could feel the energy that dwells within the deep blue. Nothing in this world could constrain the ocean, except gravitational force. 30 seconds was fleeting. Sean was tugged back into the cabin by Reeve and Mark. The aircraft rose once again, its speed accelerating suddenly, soaring towards their destination. Inside the cabin, all the Special Force soldiers shrugged off their once aloof look towards Sean and cracked him a friendly smile. Aside from viruses, ocean may be something in this world that is filled with utmost variations and uncertainty. It can be serene and beautiful at one moment, and devour everything in the next. Besides, instead of having us going all the trouble to retrieve the 200-year-old nuclear raw materials, why don't we think of a way to utilize the ocean? Not only can the force formed by the tides regenerates energy, it has great power as well. Hey rookie. I kinda like you, so be sure to follow us closely during the mission. Reeve. Has he got a gun in his equipment? Of course. But I'm afraid he doesn't know how to use it. Reeve hauled over Sean's backpack and sure enough, there is a gun laying inside. Listen here Sean, the way to use this gun is simple. There's no need for you to have great shooting skills because it comes with an auto lock-on system. Keep in mind that it won't work if you use it on zombies, but if you have come across any of the Tide's members, just shoot them with no mercy. The method of usage could not be more simple, exactly a weapon that was specially made for technical soldiers that were not accustomed to combat. Hey, be careful with it okay? If your bullets hit any of us, we'll let you have a taste of our knuckles, Mark said while waving his fist around. Everyone burst into laughter. Sean felt as if he was going for a vacation instead of heading to a dangerous mission. At last, they have reached the upper air of the location. Soaring across the weathered Statue of Liberty. After hundreds of years of buffeting, the statue was covered with mottle and batters. Some parts of the high lifted torch fell apart from the vibration of the aircraft engine, pummeling into the sea, creating splashes of waves. This statue is quite huge, Mark remarked, stroking his nose. This is the Statue of Liberty. Below us is Manhattan, a city that was once booming with its economy. Sean let out a sigh. He could clearly see the countless zombies chasing after their aircraft, leaping and stretching their scrawny arms towards them. Now I understand why the Tides chose this place for their base. These zombies are their ideal defenders. Sean frowned. How are we going to land? The aircraft landed on top of a tall building. Upon landing, the soldiers swiftly released a wire towards a relatively lower building and slid off the aircraft. Without warning, Mark hauled over Sean and zoomed down the wire. The wind gushed into Sean's wide-open mouth and the moment they landed, he was at the verge of vomiting. The rest of them retrieved their wire and released it towards another building. This time, Reeve hefted the panting Sean from the ground and slid off. No matter how much he wished to scream in terror, he had to force himself to hold it in fear that his voice could alert the zombies. Is this a relay? And I'm the baton? Sean realized sadly. Reeve tossed him on a rooftop and joked half-heartedly, "Take your time catching your breath." She then slid off to another building. A pair of military boots stopped beside Sean. "Baby, are you okay?" Sean felt a chill in his back. "I'll be great if you're not the one who appear." Just as Maya was about to encircle Sean, a person landed beside him and a freezing voice sounded above him. "If you let of any sound or vomit, I'll knock you out." Sean raised his head, only to see Heine's emotionless side profile. When he extended his hand across Maya's and encircled it around Sean's waist, single-handed, Sean had a feeling as though he was weightless. Whereas Maya stood frozen in his position, staring at his outstretched hand left unattended. Heine held on to Sean and slid to the opposite building. The worn-out wall crumbled apart just the moment they land, their wire fell off and the crumbled bricks dived into the sea of zombies below. Seeing the crowd of awaiting zombies, mouths opened and flesh falling of their faces under his feet, Sean nearly choked in terror and he shut his eyes tightly upon the scene. Totally unfazed, Heine stepped on the window panel on his heel. All Sean heard was crumbling sound of bricks, and the next second, he felt his body shot up swiftly. By the time he opened his eyes, he found himself on top of a rooftop, with a hand clutching onto his arms. Sean drew back his hand immediately. Heine still had the wire in one hand. After he retrieved his wire, the rest of the soldiers were all here. "Another 1,000 meter from our destination, we need to get across these streets." Reeve crouched on one leg at the edge of the rooftop, leaning over, observing the streets. A vexation of zombies were leaping and crawling on each other below the building, together with sounds of bone cracking and growling. Without further conveyance, the soldiers attached one end of their wire in the building they are on, and released the other end to a windowsill of a distant building. After confirming its stability, they slid off once again. This time, they were no more than 3 meters away from the zombies. If it weren't for their great speed, the zombies would have got them in a leap. Sean glanced towards Mark, thinking that he will be bringing him along. But this big fella had no intentions of that at all. Instead, he went off together with Reeve. Heine secured his wire and walked over to Sean. His circled under Sean's arms, and with a small leap, they were off the ground, gliding swiftly between buildings. However, this was not a sightseeing of cable car ride. Heine's grip was firm and secure, easing away Sean's fear of falling. The wind tugged Heine's hair, forming a moment of elegant yet unruly demeanor. As they glide across a balcony, a zombie that was prowling on the balcony went frenzy at the sight of Heine and Sean. "Oh no, we'll run into it," Sean thought in frantic. "Kick it." As though Heine's deep tone of voice wields a certain power, Sean raised his leg and kicked the zombie fiercely on its face. It tumbled off the balcony and landed on the ground with a loud thud. Yellow ooze exuded from it. Mark was crouching on a balcony, with Reeve standing on a utility pole across him, and Maya was perching on a huge advertising board, neatening his hair. They put on their field glasses and scanned through the lower building. Then all of them sprung up suddenly and leapt towards it. Heine leapt into the air like a projectile motion with Sean in his arms, and landed steadily on the building without a single noise. This building that they once thought was abandoned, had a solidly built steel gate installed at the top of it, whereas all windows and doors of the building were sealed off. They would not have imagined it as the base of the Tides organization if they have scanned from the aircraft. However, this building seemed exceptionally suspicious from the look of it now. The mechanism of the gate was similar with the vault door he saw in the nuclear power plant, but Sean was much cautious this time. Although he had no field experience, Sean, too, understands that the Tides is definitely not going to let them in easily. Heine nodded. "You have 5 minutes. The gate was built into the wall." Sean examined the surrounding and found the control panel of the building. It would be impossible for the Tides to reconstruct the whole circuit even if they wished to fortify the building, and to corroborate his theory, Sean took out his tools for test. As expected, the circuit is operating. Sean severed one of the insulation of the wire and did a little trick and short-circuited the electric supply of the building. He never thought that he would have had a chance to do something that can only be seen in the movies 200 years ago, not even in his dreams. For a moment, Sean was glad that he is a retrophiliac. The others was on their guard. Sean went back to the gate and said to Mark, "You can open it now, it shouldn't be a problem for your strength." "Huh?" Mark looked at Heine. "That's it?" Heine nodded in return. Originally, they were worried of the internal alarm going off if they open the gate by force, but if the alarm is dead, why bother? And Mark did as he was told. He pushed the gate with all his might, face reddened, and nearly had the gate torn down. As the team spearhead, Reeve was the first to enter, and Sean was concerned of her being ambushed. The others were following close behind. Maya stopped by Sean's side, seemingly wanting to protect or frankly saying, harass him, but feeling the unknown pressure from Heine's glance, he trailed after the others unwillingly. Heine shifted his eyes to Sean, and later was forced to enter the building as well. Dust filled upon the building, not a trace of living can be seen. Sean was at the verge of coughing before a respirator was pressed onto his face by Heine. The cold gaze warning him not to let out a sound or he will be dead. All of their steps were brisk but implausibly silent. They went deeper into the building, floor by floor, and finally, they came before its basement. The scanning earlier had shown that the hostage is held up inside. Sean gulped. This is a digital keypad door, only inserting the correct password can unlock it. Outmoded and troublesome. Heine raised his chin at Sean slightly, meaning open it. Letting out a quiet sigh, Sean carefully connected his portable terminal into the door panel, calculated the password, entered it and the door gradually opened. And at that instant, Heine grabbed onto the back of Sean's collar and dragged him behind himself. Dozens of zombies swarmed out and the special task force started their massacre. It seemed that the Tides knew they were coming, and left them an exclusive gift. At the end of the basement, sat a middle-aged man, tied up to a chair, confined within a metal cage. Countless zombies were crawling around the cage, attempting to force their way in. They stretched their arms into the cage, and the man's flesh was about to be skinned with every stretch. Heine pressed his hands on Sean's shoulders and kicked off the zombies with a twirl. They splattered against the ceiling, leaving an icky trace. Sean was tense to the tip of his nerves. The bone-crushing pain was still fresh in his mind, and he would not want to go through it again. As he tried to move his shoulders and found them all well and moving, he saw Heine's heatless gaze shifted to him. Sean felt as though he had become one of the dissevered zombies. The killing went on, and whenever a zombie was about to reach Sean, it would be severed by Heine's blade, pus splattering. But strange enough, not a drip of the splattered pus fall on Sean. He was like an outsider, watching the masterpiece of the special task force. Countless zombies approached Sean, and killed countless times by Heine's blade, like an irreversible loop. He had the look of a person bathed in blood from hell, emitting a strange and dangerous beauty in his every moment of cruelty. Heine extended his hands towards Sean and scooped his head onto his chest. The sound of blade piercing through bones rang by his ears. Only then Sean realized he was nearly enveloped by Heine. Every zombies that attempted to approach him dropped dead under Heine's blade. Just as Sean's respirator was at the verge of breaking, Heine let go off him. Sean lowered his head and saw a sea of zombie carcasses. He would have thrown up from the pungent smell if it wasn't for the respirator. In just 5 minutes, hundreds of zombies were annihilated. They came before the cage and the man tied to a chair let out a shaken groan. Sean just recognized who he was then, Professor Manson. Why is the infamous virologist that has the rank of a major general here? We have to get him out from the cage, right? Mark said while looking at Sean. Sean waved his hands frantically. Hey! That's not my specialty. Without a word, Heine stepped forward, took out his blade and slashed. With a long clang and some sparks flying, the cage was sliced neatly apart. Sean gaped at the sight as Mark nodded. As expected from boss, straightforward as ever. Because the cage that was made of ordinary steel meant nothing in front of a special force soldier's blade. Hurriedly, Sean went forward to unbind Professor Manson. His face was pale and ragged. Are you all right, Professor? With that said, Professor Manson hauled Sean over with his hand by Sean's throat. Everything happened so fast that Sean hasn't even grasped what was happening. He saw Heine stretched his hands towards himself, but his fingers only got a touch of Sean's arm. An incredibly swift action that was totally unexpected, even for Heine. All of the soldiers went on guard. Sean crept his fingers towards his waistline, but before he could reach his gun, his hand was twisted by Professor Manson as the gun fell to the ground. You've joined the Tides, Major General Manson, Heine stated in a dangerously low voice. Mark's hand clenched his weapon tightly until a cracking sound of knuckle can be heard, whereas Maya pulled out the thin thread slowly from his wristband. A hint of coldness flashed before his eyes. Damn it. I've never had the taste of betrayal before in my life. Manson sneered while taking careful steps towards the entrance, tugging Sean along with him. Colonel Burton, I know what you are capable of. Stay where you are or I'll wring off his neck. You scoundrel. Just as Mark took a step forward, a crack was heard. Gritting his teeth, Sean's face turned white. Manson had dislocated his arm. Heine held Mark back immediately. Don't come any closer, for I'll be tearing off his whole arm next. Professor. Why? Are you doing this? Never once had Sean thought that a person who was well acclaimed by everyone would desert to the Tides. All of these was a trap set by Professor Manson, To lure the elite team from Special Task Force here, but why is he alone? How does he plan to deal with a whole team of Special Force soldiers? Especially with Heine Burton here. Sean thought in puzzlement. You mean joining the Tides? Or leading all of you here? Is that important? Manson has exited the door while he was talking. He then patted Sean on his cheek and continued. We are always in pursuit of something, that's what make our life worthwhile. But Charles, that place can no longer satisfy my aspiration. Leaving behind those words, Manson abruptly pushed Sean back into the room and closed the door. Some of them darted forward, but it was too late. Sean hit hard on the ground, his left cheek grazed across the floor with a stinging pain, though for sure, the pain from his dislocated arm was worst. Heine neared him and got him up to his feet. Sean still had his mind on the words left by Professor Manson as Heine lifted Sean's palm carefully, his fingers slipped between Sean's. What are you thinking? Sean lifted his head, and before he could answer that, there was a loud crack, his arm was relocated. Mouth wide opened, Sean did not even have the chance to scream in pain. He stared at Heine, never once has he thought that Heine would help him relocate his arm. Do you hurt anywhere else? Heine placed his hand on Sean's shoulder, his gaze pierced through Sean's mind. Just as Sean was attempting to discern his actions, Heine suddenly left his side. Mark charged towards the door and pushed. Damn it, it's locked. Sean. Any way to unlock it? Sean shook his head. Manson took all my equipment. The other side. Sean knows that if it wasn't for him, any of the soldiers here would have gotten rid of Manson easily, even if he has strengthened himself with X-Virus. By the end of the day, he is still a burden to them. Manson wants to trap us here? For what? Suffocate us? Mark ruffled his head in agitation. Aside from the door Manson used to escape, there was no other exit in the room. It was a totally confined space. Shh, Reeve placed a finger to her lips. I hear the sound of water. In the next second, water came gushing out from all four corners of the room. Damn it. He wants us drown. That fiend. Mark punched his fist hard on the door. I have to say, this is indeed quite creative of him. Sean shifted his gaze to Heine. The water has covered up their feet, and he thought Heine would disdain his incompetence, but clearly Heine had no concern for all of these. Nothing could waver this man, not even death. Boss. What do we do? Reeve looked at Heine. Heine put on his field glasses and scanned through the wall. This basement is made of high-density titanium. We can't cut our way through it. That rogue. He specially made this basement to lure us in, Mark said through gritted teeth. This is so-called even if one had wings one could hardly fly away. There's no possible escape. Reeve looked around the room and said, Sean, with this volume of water, how long will it take for it to fill up the room? 1 hour. Just an hour? Everyone, hurry. Crack your head and find a way to get out of here. None of them blamed Sean, but Sean himself understand that if they had left him for dead, they could have seized Professor Manson and leave this place easily. Now's not the time for guilty conscience, Sean. You're a technical soldier. A technical soldier who lost his tools has no difference from a special force soldier who lost his weapon during mission, Sean said to himself. Wait a minute. Sean suddenly recalled, he has not lose all his equipment.